You're gonna have to be patient with me because I lost my voice, unfortunately, from talking too much. My name is McDowell, and I'm an underwater photographer and technical diver. So I do something that's quite different than many other people in the world. I go down to about 120 meters and look for new species. It's quite complicated. I go in with 6 cylinders, which you can see on the top left, and I go in with 2 cameras, and it weighs about 90 kilos total. So I go on quite a few expeditions, and going quite deep, you can't just organize an expedition. I self-fund and do all my own research. It's what I love doing. And so I need to go on trips where there's other people doing the deep diving, but for the depth that I go to, you can't find it very easily. So I dive out of Egypt a lot, and the guys that I dive with in Egypt also did a trip to Sudan last year looking for a missing World War II submarine. We didn't find it, but that also meant that we kept doing dives below. We probably did about 5 days of dives below 100 meters, and I got to look for all new species, which was great. And then the guys weren't worried about finding a submarine or looking for a submarine. They just hung around me. So I found quite a few species, what we think are new species there, which was quite cool. I also did a trip with Oxford University to Honduras for 5 weeks in September. And the group was called Thinking Deep, and we were looking for new coral and fish species. And so my talk was called Looking for New Species in the Twilight Zone. So depths between sort of 30 and 150 meters, they're called the Twilight Zone. It's also called the mesophotic depth range, and that means that you have reduced light, and then these different species need to adapt to the difference in light. And so there's a hypothesis that if you have overfished shallow reefs, that it's possible that the species will then go down to deeper depths, and then if they can repopulate the lower depth range, then they can hopefully replenish shallow reefs. Right now, it's just a hypothesis. We need to find out what species are down there. It's actually one of the fewest, mesophotic zone is one of the least classified areas in the sea, because if you have recreational scuba limits at 40 meters, that's sort of where most research is capped at. And then if you have to have submersibles after that, but submersibles usually they're too expensive to go just below the shallow reefs. So this when I go down there, nobody knows what species are down there. You sometimes have overlap between the shallow reef, and so we just don't know what's down there right now, and how if the mesophotic depths are an extension of shallow reefs, and we know very little about them. In order to understand the health of reefs and how shallow reefs are affected, we need to look at the deeper reefs as well. So what does it look like down there? So the top left photo is sorry about my voice today. So the top left photo was taken in Sudan, and it was a really cool dive because that's Simon Taylor Watson, and he's one of my good friends. He trains up a lot of BBC cameramen on this particular rebreather that we dive on. So we rolled off the boat, and it was a 120 meter dive we were doing that day. And so we did our safety check, and we were sort of between 6 and 15 meters we were descending, because you have to descend quite quickly. And we rolled off the boat into a school of like a couple thousand barracuda, and we were right in the middle. And it's a bubble check, so you have to check for bubbles in case, if you have any issues in shallow depths. When you're diving that depth, you have to avoid the dive and fix your problem. So you do a spin around, and when I was spinning around, it was like thousands of barracuda I was like staring at, and it was amazing. So we kept descending quite quickly, and then we were down to about 40, 50 meters, and there were not many fish. And then we got down to about 60, 70, 80, and then there was like thousands of sleek unicorn fish, which are those fish around Simon. And that photo was taken at 110 meters with my second camera, as I'm trying to keep track of 4 dive computers, making sure I don't kill myself as I was descending really quickly and being it was an amazing little trip down there. So you do find fish down there. That's quite rare. Around this little island, when we pulled into this island where the sub was supposed to be, there's nobody there. There was a mercenary boat. There was the security for the mercenary boat that was Mongolian registered. We didn't know how all this was going to affect it. You're not going to have any dive boats going to dive around this island because it's a bit sketchy. So I don't know what the mercenary boat was doing. I don't know if they fish, but there was like loads of fish around there, so that was quite cool. The top right is a very particular type of gorgonia that I've only found in one spot in Egypt, and that's at about 70 meters. And it's, a lot of different areas can be quite sort of rocky, and then you just find little crops of coral bits. The bottom left was taken in Honduras, and that was about 50 meters, and it's quite typical. At 50 meters, you see a lot of different coral species, and you get a lot of sponges. As you go deeper, you get less coral, and you get different types of gorgonians that grow up. The bottom right, that was in about 90 meters in Egypt, and it's very typical to find a lot of these tall whip corals. And you find like smaller gorgonians, and the quality of water is very clear in Egypt, so they get a lot of light, so you get a lot of good coral species there. So the top left is a Chero-stylus squat lobster, and that particular species used to show up in my photos. So when I go down, I just look at gorgonians, and if I see something and the shape of it looks good, and I photograph it, you can't see any color. It can be quite dark. So these guys just showed up in my photos all the time, and so then I sent photos off to the worldwide Japanese specialist, and he thinks it could be a new species. You can't name a species unless you collect specimens, but I don't have the paperwork to take anything out of the sea in Egypt or Indonesia or Sudan, where I do a lot of my diving, because I'm affiliated with Oxford, but not so much. And when you go down, I'll explain them. But it's quite difficult to actually collect specimens and name them and get IDs for them. Top right is a soft coral that you find quite shallow, and you also find it quite deep. The bottom left is a really nice gorgonian that I've only found sort of from 70 to 90 meters. And the bottom right, I really love this photo. When I did the dive down through the barracuda and then all this unicorn fish, and then we kept descending, and then I stopped looking at this because it's a Nembrotha anamensis anemone, and usually it's quite brown, and because it was found so deep, it lost all the pigmentation, and so they're pure white. And so to see that difference, I think is quite special, and I didn't know it at the time. There's a really nice white shrimp on the left side that is also white, and he's camouflaged, and I really like him. The top left is, that was taken at about 85 meters. You have different types of whip coral. You have tunicates, you have tube worms around the tunicates. And so you get a lot of life, and you get a lot of color around that depth as well. Top right is a gorgonian. We find it at one particular site as well. And you get like the whip coral type of gorgonian, which is that, and then you get the branching one, and they're both this very vivid purple. It's very pretty. Bottom left is a typical gorgonian we find between sort of 30 and 65 meters. And bottom right is a gorgonian. That's a likely new species. That was found at 120 meters. So why is it difficult to dive this deep and look for new species? So if you look at this dive, this was a 101 meter dive. I did a multi-level dive. So the bottom depth, you have to limit your bottom time very carefully because you don't want to have too long of a dive. So I could have done a dive to 100 meters and then stayed at the bottom depth for 18 minutes. And if I did that, the dive time would be about 2 hours and 40 minutes. If you kept so when you ascend, you have to go 10 meters a minute. If you go slower, you're going to end up with a much longer decompression. So if you do so with this, you have your bottom time, which is from the surface to the bottom. So if it takes 5 minutes and you have an 18-minute bottom time, you have 13 minutes at the bottom. So by going up I went down to 100, and then after 12 minutes, at 12 minutes, you can't do it at 13, you can't do it at 14. At 12 minutes, you must go up to, I think it went up to 85. So by going up to 85, I ended up with an extra 2 minutes to look for critters. And then when you ascend, you go up 10 meters a minute. Otherwise, you end up with a lot more decompression. And so this, I guess just showing this, is that if you're looking for species at this depth, if it's a bit rocky, every dive site's different. You have like 13 to 14 to 15 minutes to look for things. So you don't, it's a very short amount of time. If you do shallow water diving, like I do often in Indonesia and Philippines, and you go down to 40 meters per dive, you can do 4 dives a day, and they can be like 80 to 90 minutes, and then the whole time you're looking for new stuff and you're finding stuff to photograph. So if you're doing this, it's part of the time that you go down is you're making sure that you're in safe levels with all your computers. You won't hurt yourself, and so safety is always the paramount concern when you're technical diving. So then when you're looking for species on top of that, you actually have very little time to look for them. It's also expensive. So I do, apart from the deep stuff, I also, people are quite interested in me looking for new species and being a female technical diver. On the Sudan expedition, there were 27 guys on the boat and me, so I was the only female. It's not very common to find a female. It's very uncommon also to find somebody that's photographing because you have a task load. You can't give yourself too many jobs underwater because your safety, you always have to worry about your safety. So, my photos, or if you get photos of deep critters, they're actually not very interesting. They're just documenting photos. So I also like to enter competitions, and I also like beautiful photos and of different styles and techniques and behaviors. And so I do some shallow water diving too, which is often in different places from the deep stuff, because the deep stuff I have to specifically stay where the deep divers are going. So I go to Indonesia a lot, I go to the Philippines, I go to South America and so. So the top left was actually taken on a holiday that I was doing with friends in Croatia. We were going to a music festival, and we were in this bay in Croatia, and there were like families everywhere. And then I was swimming around, and I came upon this jellyfish that was being eaten by sea bream. So I Googled this, and I can't find anybody else that has photographed sort of this type of behavior. So it's actually quite cool. And I ran up to the house and grabbed the housing and then ran back down to photograph this. It took me like 20 minutes to find it, so I was quite pleased. At the top right, so when you dive a lot, I like really weird stuff. Anything that's interesting or different. And these are really cool. Disgusting, but they're isopod parasites, and they attach to, depending on the fish, they attach to different parts of the fish. And this one is like, on the soldier fish, you almost always find the isopod parasites right on their forehead like that. And that one has 2 little babies, just closer to its mouth as well. I love them. Every day I kind of have this radar for parasites and mouth critters. So the bottom left one is a mouth critter. It's a male cardinal fish, and he incubates eggs inside of his mouth. So all cardinal fish have different color eggs. If you have a Bengal cardinal fish, the eggs hatch out, and then the dad holds the babies in the mouth, I think for about 8 days before they're released. So I'm always looking, like if I see cardinal fish, I'm like always checking out their mouths, and if like mouth pouch is bigger, and I talk to them underwater. I'm like, do you have babies? Do you have babies? And it's quite fun. I really love cardinal fish. Bottom right is, that was in Wales. I think it was in South Wales, along the coast. And we went into this bay. Had no idea these spider crabs were there. And so we went diving, and I had a macro lens on, and I saw them, and I thought, okay, well, we'll come back and dive this again tomorrow. And I thought, no, I'm going to go in. That was about 5 meters of water. So we got out, I changed the camera around, threw the wide angle on, jumped back in, and photographed these guys. And thankfully I did it that day, because when we went in the next day, they were all dead, because they mate and then they die, which I didn't know. Now I know. So I also look for really cool patterns and shapes. A lot of my photos that get a lot of interest are mostly patterns and shapes. So the top one is a parrotfish eye. That was in Thailand. The top right was really an anemone. We have never been able to find an ID on that. That's from the Philippines. I really like that photo. The bottom left is Gonopora coral, and the bottom right is a cushion star. So for all the dives that I have around the world, you actually don't find that many big schools of fish. And the big schools of fish that I have seen are often way out in places that there aren't many people, and it would be quite difficult for fishing boats to get out to see them. So I guess it just makes me wonder if this was a couple hundred years ago, if along the coast where I dive a lot, if that do have very high diversity, if they would have these large schools of fish, because you just don't you don't know what things look like a couple hundred years ago, and it just makes me think, how much have we taken out? So the few places I have seen really large schools of fish, the top left is a couple thousand barracuda that was in Sudan. Top right, wrecks often have a lot of fish around them, so that was in Thailand. Bottom left, they're called jacks, and that was in Cocos Island on the Pacific side of Costa Rica. And the bottom right is reef sharks, and that was in Cocos as well. You also get lots of schooling hammerheads. And everybody thinks, oh, sharks are scary. I will always swim into the middle of sharks, and they always run away. And so the schools of hammerheads, you can have like 30 coming in towards you, and then they see you. And if you're on open circuit, you have bubbles. If they see you, they just turn around in some way. So I think it's not as easy to even to photograph sharks. Any questions?